Hey, how you doing, Ian?
Hey, Grayson, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I guess it's been colder up there where you are, isn't it?
It has been, but it's moderated a little bit. We're about -3 or so today and kind of misty. So we're a lot different than we were about a few days ago. And we're looking at possibly 1.5 feet of snow coming at us in the next few days. So it looks like a system is rolling through.
Yeah. Here it's been a little foggy in the mornings, but not too bad. But up there, I know you have more cold temperatures, so yeah. Before we get into the topics I wanted to discuss, why don't you kind of briefly share your story, how you kind of became a beekeeper, just to briefly share that story if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Who was that guy on the screen before I came on? Is he your brother?
He's my brother, Vincent.
Oh, oh yeah, Vincent. He does all the camera work then.
He does all the camera work. He's all the behind the scenes tech kind of guy. He's just behind the scenes running the show.
I was wondering because your videos I watch every once in a while. I notice it's not just a station. Like I just set mine up on a tripod and just
Mhm.
video and then edit later on the couch. But I notice yours is actually, you know, interactive. So he does a pretty good job.
He does.
Yeah.
Hey Lee.
Yeah. I'm just back from the sales barn. We have a heifer sale that we're going to host on Wednesday. So we're just scrambling to get things ready for that. So after I have about 20 to 30 minutes, I can talk to you here. And
That'll
then
be
I got
good.
to get back to the barn. I have to weld some gates together. But
Yeah.
yeah, my story. How far back do you want me to go?
Um, not just kind of how you kind of started. Maybe just briefly how who got you into it. What briefly share a little story. Doesn't matter how back you just whatever you want to do. I know
Sure.
some people's stories are long, but you can just make it brief if you want to.
Yeah, I wasn't born into a family with bees. I was born into a farming family, generational. We've been around for the farm just celebrating its 100th year actually, and the sale we're going to have is a heifer sale, and we have a little bit of a gimmick going on. 100 years farming, 100 heifers for sale. So we have that behind us. But I brought honeybees into the farm about 25 years ago. So out of high school, boy, that makes me sound old. How old are you, by the way? You must be 15, 16?
13.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when I was your age, I didn't even know what, or hardly even paid attention to honeybees. I graduated high school, went into university, agriculture of diploma, and this agriculture course had a beekeeping class. And I figured, hell, I might as well take this. So I took it with my buddy as an after hours class, a couple credits, helped me pass my diploma course, and was hooked. So then I bought 4 hives, and much the same as probably with you, just the inspiring presence of bees and just working. This is pretty neat. So then I started building them up. Didn't know anything. Didn't know what I was doing. There was no internet like this back then, so I couldn't tap into this vast pool of knowledge. Right, it was just kind of hanging off of beekeepers at these conventions, and as long as they would listen to me and answer my questions, I would talk to them just to try to glean some kind of information off these guys. So I built up my colonies to about 30 or so in 2 years. Felt pretty good about myself, and then I lost pretty much all my colonies that winter, except for one. I called it my holy hive. That previous summer, I went and collected a colony from St. Lupus Church. The caretaker come to me because he knew I had some bees, and he said, "You want to take care of this problem for me? I don't want to kill the bees." So he said, "Do you want to take them out?" So I went in and extracted this hive from the side of the wall of this church, and I dumped everything into this box. I must have got the queen because they all kept, and brought it back and wintered them with the rest of my hives, and it was the only one that survived. So that spring, I was feeling pretty sore, and I was sitting there with this one beehive. And I went out and I started working through it. And Dad was telling me, he said, we have a lot of work to do on the farm here, grain farm, cattle farm, and you're doing this beekeeping thing, which is fine. But if you want to, you got to make a choice here. If you want to spend more time with bees and incorporate it, make it into something, then let's step into this, make it a business. If you don't, just keep it as a hobby and we'll just leave it as that. And so I went out and I was working with my colonies, or with the holy hive, I should say. And I was thinking to myself, this actually is pretty cool, and maybe I can do something with this. So then I went out and bought 40 hives from a local beekeeper, and this time I was serious. I hinged off him to provide me a bit of a commercial perspective. Just how do you manage these things to keep them alive, and not just alive, but get production off them. He showed me the ropes. I built a honey house, bought this old extractor, and I built this business right from the bottom up. So it's a long, 25 years later. What would I put in the shed? 1,400 colonies in the winter shed now. Hopefully come out alive. Pretty good working facility. I run, anywhere around 250 to 300,000 pounds of honey through this place. Hire one almost full-time employee, and through the summer I hire another 5 or 6 kids just to help with the work, and it's become a nice complement to the farm. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm all about.
That's
How
cool.
about you? How did you get introduced into bees?
Well, it was 5 years ago. We kind of just like jumped right into it. Didn't really know anything. Just watched YouTube. We saw the bees. We thought, oh, that's cool. Let's do beekeeping. So I say, right, we got our first colony, or 2 colonies for exact, in Florida. I forgot where it was in Florida, somewhere down in Florida. We got some 2 colonies. The beekeeper kind of showed us what everything basically was. Just simple, nothing really deep. It wasn't really like my mentor. He was just, showing you a little bit about, inspecting, showing us how the colony was healthy, looking at the colony. Then we loaded it into the, trailer, brought it home, set it out in the yard, and then, we kind of put it in the woods. That's why I, made a name, Wildwoods Honeybee Farms, because, our apiary, our colonies are in the, woods where all the pine trees are. So, and then
Uh,
kept on going for 5 years. I kind of ended up where I am with 6 colonies. I don't know where I want next year. I'm always say maybe 8, maybe 10. Just depends how many I get through winter. So
nice.
that's basically what I'm about. That's
What
the
kind of what kind of honey flows do you have in your area?
Well, we have some pretty good ones in spring, summer. Especially my allergies get all messed up because we have pine trees, and we have like, I don't know how many pine trees I can count, but it's real good for the bees. The bees love the pine tree, so we get some good decent honey. Matter of fact, I did some honey harvesting in one full deep. Um, what was it? Maybe early July, maybe early June. We did a honey harvest. It was like a big old deep. It was like 60 pounds of honey. It just felt like, whenever I
Nice.
wanted to go into the bottom deep, it just hurt my back. I couldn't lift that thing. So I had to take all the frames out and put them and extract it, and then I put it back on the colony, and they filled back up those 8 frames, and now it's heavy again. So I left that on for the bees. So we got a good decent honey flow down here.
All right.
Yeah.
Where do you sell your honey to?
Local people around here. One time
Uh,
we did sell it on marketplace, but this year, I sold a little bit. We're kind of eating the honey, some of it ourselves as well.
yeah. Well, it's fun when you start making money. When I got into the business myself, it's, you're producing this product from y- basically, nothing. Like, where is this honey coming? It still amazes me when I'm bringing the honey in. So where is all this wealth coming from? It's just uh, completely awe-inspiring. Um, and then when I first started out, when I was about your size of honeybees, I started collecting my neighbors. They started buying. I was like, I can make some money on this. So that's icing on the cake, right? Build this thing into a business. I can.
Right.
And then I started, as I was building my colonies up, and I figured, oh yeah, I'll pay my taxes with this or something. And then I started building a little bit more, and I could supplement my income a little bit. And before you know it, this is my responsibility of the farm, is to manage the bees. Well, I do a lot in managing the the uh, the business aspect of the rest of the farm, but bees is pretty much my segment of what I manage in between the seasons. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's cool. Um, First of all, I was gonna say, what's your method? Because how many colonies do you have? 1,400. Is that what you said?
yeah, that's what I put in the shed this winter. Yeah,
How do you like you said? So you have like managers to manage some of your colonies to help you out, during the spring. Because I'd imagine that'd be kind of hard to manage the colonies. If you have 1,400 colonies, I bet you'd have some kind of help with it.
yeah,
Um,
I have myself, and then I hire one dedicated beekeeper, which is Carrie. So she's a trained beekeeper. She pretty much looks after all the tasks on the farm. And I put her in the honey house during the honey flow, and she manages the honey flow, or manages the honey house. So she'll have 3 or 4 guys in here running the equipment. And then throughout the spring, she is dedicated in making queens and making nukes and brood work and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just trying to keep things going on the edges. After the honey flow, she's also really involved in medication of the colonies and feeding and getting the colonies ready for winter. So,
yeah,
so it's her and and then during the busy season when there's a lot of boxes to lift, I hire in school kids. So it just happens that school is out end of June, and that's when I start. You know, I turn into a box lifter at that point in time. We're done with the brood work. We started in the honey flow, so we're moving boxes. So I hire all these school kids to help me that through the summer season, and I lay them off at Labor Day, which is beginning of September. That's when they go back to school, and typically we're done the honey flow at that point in time, and then there's just Carrie and I to manage the bees, set them up for winter.
yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm starting to kind of do some little like making new boxes, and I'm going to start selling them here soon. But
Nice.
I think the first topic I wanted to kind of discuss real quick was basically why you think feeding bees is important, like the art of feeding bees. You discussed that on Brian. Brian's down here. Ian, when I
Ah.
quit my job, I'll come help.
Anytime.
Yeah.
The art of feeding bees. That's a pretty good question. It's a controversial question. There's a lot of beekeepers, not necessarily commercial, but more so if you pull apart the demographic of the beekeeper, like the, the beekeeping community is a huge demographic of beekeepers. You have on one side of the spectrum, you have hobby type beekeepers, and I'd say more so you'll find more of a naturalist type of management practice because of smaller scale. And, that natural aspect can go through, but typically on the one side, you find more of that natural aspect. And it goes all the way across to the other side where you have the commercial beekeeper who are managing their hives, part of agriculture, big in business. It's about production. So dollars and cents. You have this huge spectrum, and anywhere in between, you have beekeepers that just have different philosophies how to keep bees. Um, Generally, as you drift into the managed commercial type industry, you start tapping into feeding your bees as a tool to help you raise the colonies and to make sure they're in adequate strength to be able to produce you the honey crop, or to be able to build them out to be big enough to be able to provide pollination service. So the art of feeding is very reflective on exactly what's going on within the area and within your environment and what you're trying to achieve with your bees. You can put a lot of attention into, like, I focus manage my hive management, and I do a lot of feeding of my colonies because I'm super focused into it. But there's also other methods of managing your bees where you maybe leave a little bit more honey on your colonies, and just allow them to have more honey at their disposal more often. And that's not a wrong thing. It's not a right thing. It's just different practices and how to manage your hives. So before I go any further, do you feed your hives?
I do. Down here I do feed. We have sunch, especially because we have different temperatures. But the main thing is that we go up and down. So one day we might have a good 65-degree weather, we're very 50-degree weather, we're very gonna go out fly, burn up stores as usual, and then it's gonna go back down cold, 40 degrees, and then we're gonna run out of all that food storage whenever we're flying looking for pollen. Then
Yeah.
they they get all their food's gone and they don't have anything to eat and they starve to death all winter. So that's basically why we feed bees. I do feed some of them. I feed some sugar with protein, and then I actually did start making some of my own candy boards. I'm feeding as well. The candy boards are gonna last because I don't know, down here it's been real nice, like 70, maybe 65, 70-degree weather. It's been real nice. I don't know when it's gonna cold go down. I know on Wednesday, we have rain and stuff, and next week, this whole week's will be, kind of rainish and then mildew, but not too bad cold. But I think next week it will get kind of cooled down pretty soon. So yeah, that's what we
So
do.
what you're saying is you're feeding your bees to bridge between two periods of dearth is what you're trying to do.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I focus on mine too. Um, well, I focus mine a little bit more than that even, because I'm trying to maximize honey production. So more honey, more money, right? So then what I do is I fill in the blank with sugar syrup to be able to get them through winter, which is twofold. Throughout the summer periods, we pull in a lot of summer honey, which is canola honey, and that just happens to be terrible winter feed. It sets up really hard, and at times, if the conditions aren't right, um, they could just about starve on a box full of honey just because it's too hard, too dry environment up here. So what we like to do is manage our bees, and that's one of the reasons why we manage them in a single box. Is the bees push all the honey up over the excluder, and then we take all that honey and we harvest it, and then we process it into a cream product for a very palatable high, like a premium honey. We sell it all across the world. So then it empties that brood nest out. So then we backfill it as the fall goes on into winter. We backfill that nest full of sugar syrup to provide that food they need for winter, which is a spectacular winter feed for bees. Um, One thing about holding bees through winter up here is they go into winter in November. They don't come back out until uh, April. So we're looking at 5 months, sometimes 5.5 months of bees confined in a box. And you don't want food source in the hive that is full of a lot of impurities where it collects in their gut. You want a pure food source, which pretty much there's no waste products for it to accumulate, and it just makes it a lot easier to allow them to endure themselves through a long period of time. So there's a few reasons why we feed the bees up here like that. And then in the spring, because we have them in single boxes, typically they're out of food. I put them out, so we give them some feed just to stimulate that nest, get them going. And we're not typically feeding when there's nectar or pollen coming in, because you might as well rest on that free stuff coming in. But when those nests are ramped up and they're producing, sometimes there isn't enough coming in, and we like to supplement the feed coming in just to help accelerate the growth and just to provide and build up these big nests so we can take a split and then later on, so then we can take that big honey crop. But we're very careful as we're feeding and not to allow the situation where there be a chance of adulteration of the sugars up into the honey boxes. So we're very, um, I'd say in spring it's more hand to mouth. We feed, they they gather, consume, they use, they don't store, right? So it's like very much hand to mouth. In the fall, we allow them to hoard it, so they just backfill that brood nest and yeah, make sure they're nice and heavy going into winter.
Yeah, that's right. Down here, that's why most times, if once they're bringing in pollen, especially like in the spring when you're coming right into especially some beekeepers will think, once you're in spring, like early spring, that is, once you're in late spring, you may not have to feed, but for down here, if you don't feed in early spring for a week or two, because everything's just starting, like the pollen's just starting to bloom up. You have everything that's just brand new off the bat, and then the bees are still. So it's good to kind of feed in early to spring, maybe mid spring, and then once you see pollen everywhere, you see them bringing in enough pollen, then you can hold back on the feed till fall. Everybody has different methods, but that's one thing to consider about maybe feed a little halfway for depending on what month you're in. Whenever you have nice temperatures, whenever you see temperatures, thing is some like down here in March, any time of the year, especially like early January, maybe sometimes February, you'll have some warm temperatures, which can sometimes fool people to make splits too early. I've made that mistake, splitting too early, and then it gets back too much cold, and we die because of the coldness. They don't have enough bees in that little split. That's another thing to check, about the weather. Like if you don't feed, and then you're out of town or something, let's just say you're out of town doing something different, and you see nice weather. You're like, oh well, I don't really need to feed my bees right now. It's nice, and then it goes back down cold, and you're not feeding. It just depends, how big your colony is. If you have, let's just say 50,000 bees in there, you may be okay as long as you have enough resources. The more bees there are, the more they're going to eat. The less bees there are, they're still going to eat a lot to try to keep all of themselves warm. So yeah, that's another thing to think about while feeding.
Yeah, and throughout the spring, I'm always reading that nest to just if they don't need the feed, I don't provide it. But if they need it, like when you're going down, you pull that frame up. I'm always assessing what that frame looks like. And I'm always assessing what that brood nest looks like because they're telling you whether they need it or not. And I'm always looking to keep that, in a sense, you want to keep the nest wet. I'm always asking, is the nest wet? Meaning, like, is there syrup storage around that brood nest? So what I'm looking for is you have your brood nest, typically in the center of your frame, and it varies in maturity. But let's say they lay it out starting in the center, so mature from the center. As it goes out, it's getting younger and younger to the edges. Typically, what I'm looking for is, well, you're looking for pollen storage, which is fine. But when we're talking about sugar syrup, what I'm looking for is the syrup that rims around that immediate brood nest, and that tells me I'm looking at that space between that brood nest and the syrup that's being brought in, and I'm seeing an expansion. I want them to be pushed up against that syrup or the nectar coming in, and that's telling me that there's enough coming in that you can store it, and then there's still have lots to be able to use it. You know what I mean? But if it's dry, if that brood nest is dry, then they're short on it, and I got to get syrup on them, lickety split, just like that. So then we typically give them a little bit of syrup, not a lot, just a flash, just like that, right? Just to
Give them a
provide
big.
that rim. Yeah. So we're looking more so at hand to mouth because syrup's expensive. I don't want to spend money on another tanker of syrup if I don't have to. If they can collect it for free, then I'm going to let them do that. But if they need it, it's going to cost me money and growth because when they're a little bit short on feed, they pull back. Is they just kind of ramp back their acceleration, and they kind of find that balance of growth to the amount of resources available. So if they're nice and lush, lots coming in, and they have it nicely stored around the brood nest like that, then they're just going to go full tilt forwards because it's just. But I don't want to overfeed them either because not only is it expensive, but at times You don't want to plug out that nest with too much syrup, so then they can't take that ramping step forward to be able to grow it out. So as we're going through, we're always looking at these nests, and it's not hive to hive. We're looking yard to yard pretty much, because every yard is a different area, and every yard has different nectar and different resources coming in. So we're looking for that syrup rim. And if it's dry, we've got syrup on there. If it's not, we just kind of hold back a little bit. It's continual surveillance. It's a lot of work, but at the same time, that's our jobs, right? We're out there to grow bees, and we're out there to spend as little amount of money as we can on these nests to grow them out, because we're growing them out to ultimately produce that honey crop up here, or pollination in other places down in the States. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much the art of feeding bees. It comes with a lot of experience, a lesson, the school of hard knocks, I guess you can call it. It's not something that you can acquire just by being told. It's something that you have to actually observe, and then trial and error. Too much syrup, oop, too little syrup. Oop, this is the Goldilocks,
Yeah.
right on the money, and just give her.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that's true. Everything you said as well. I guess the second topic, we wanted to little discuss, even though we're not in the time for this, but whenever you get into the seasons where you like to treat for varroa mites, do you like to what is there like a certain practice you've discovered that you've discovered, or you're quite fond of, your kind of opinion on mite treatments and stuff like that?
Oh boy, loaded question here. We're having a lot of trouble right now. Typically, first off, what do you use for mite treatments, Grayson?
Well, I use this year. This is my first year kind of treating, so this year I used Apivar.
Yeah,
Um, I know some people. I know there's many different stuff. You have Apigard, OA, Formic Pro. You have Apivar. You have many different methods, and people have different opinions to use. And some beekeepers are treatment free and different stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I basically simple. I use Apivar.
What's your decision on treating your hive or not?
Usually that's because during the winter I want the winter bees, like the varroa might, the viruses that pass are transmitted from bee to bee.
Yeah,
You can do some more scientific search on this, but this is just everybody's heard this. The varroa mite can take 3 months, free 2 months off, free 4 months actually, off the winter bee physiology, and then you only have 3 months off the bee, which gets you, it just depends when your queen starts to lay, the winter bee, the physiology. Then it gets you, maybe January, February, and then those bees slowly start to die off low, and then then once you have a low bee count, then especially for where you're at, you might have some experience with that, where the mites kind of sometimes they can kill off the bees, not every time. Some bees can handle the mites, but some, if you're, especially if you're have a mite high, mite count, load, then it can kill your bees. So
yeah,
yeah,
those little buggers, they feed off the fat stores of the winter bees, and it just zaps their longevity. The bees, they physiology, their physical nature is different through winter than it is through the summer. The summer bees, they progress their development very quickly, right? You have a short-lived summer bee. Through the winter, they almost, in a sense, stall at the early stages of their development, and they retain all those fat bodies, all those fats and proteins, and that's what they use to help them extend through that period of dearth. Up here, it's 5.5 months, and then they use all this nourishment that's on their bodies to help rear that next round of brood as they come out of winter. And those mites, what they do is they feed. Some of it is feeding on the fat stores, and when they feed on the fat stores, it just zaps that longevity from the nest. So up here, when you're trying to keep them for 5.5 months with any type of mite pressure, you're not going to winter very successfully. So we try to control the mites the best we can. Do you do any monitoring or anything like that, or what's your whole
um,
uh,
this
philosophy
year
about that?
this year I didn't, test for them. I did try to test. I have a video like the powdered sugar wash, but I didn't have all the right materials to do the stuff, to test. So this year at Hive Life, because we're going to the Hive Life conference.
Oh, nice.
So then, I want to maybe look into one of those alcohol wash at the half off. I bet they'll have it somewhere. I want to get one of those while we're there, and
Yeah, don't worry about alcohol. I used to like my entire beekeeping career has been using alcohol because that is what has been recommended to me. But Randy Oliver has throughout COVID because alcohol is scarce a lot of times. He said, "Well, there's got to be something else that we can use here," and he tested different products and he come up with Dawn dish detergent,
that's
and
right.
it is an absolutely amazing. Uh, Product to shake mites. The mites almost just go poop right off the bee. It's an amazing thing, and when you're shaking bees, your hands are suds. They're being washed as opposed to alcohol. There's always spills and it's just a miserable job. So I use like in a big milk jug, about a gallon. I put a tablespoon of Dawn dish detergent in there, and I do get a lot of foaming. I think I shake it too hard. Someone told me I don't have to shake it as hard. It just almost got to swirl it because
Like
those like with alcohol you really had to shake it for at least a minute, or do you take it back to the honey house and put it in a shaker, you give it a good shake for 5 minutes just to make sure all those mites come off. But with Dawn dish detergent, it's just like Greg Burns, like last time I heard him talk about this, he was like boop. They just fall off the bees within
yeah,
under a minute. I've done shakes, and this last fall, I've done lots of shakes, but I've done shakes where I put the bees in and just swirl them in 30 seconds like this, count my mites, and there's got to be more. So I shake them for another minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. The first 30 seconds got practically everything I needed to know. So if you're going to do that, save the money in alcohol and just buy a bottle of dish detergent.
that's exactly
Yeah.
what I was gonna do. Because I've heard of method before. Dawn dishwasher soap. That's what my plan was to do whenever. Because I didn't have the materials to do the washes, but next year I plan to do that. And
Yeah,
then
it's a good thing, a good practice to get into because this is the number one problem within our industry is raw mite, and I don't think you're going to be escaping it. You treated your colonies, but what you want to do is monitor your colonies too, just to see if things are working. There's a
yeah,
lot of different products you can use, like you used Apivar. Uh, but you can use formic and you can use thymol and you can use oxalic acid and all these other tricks, right? And as you use all these products, you got to check back to make sure it's working. So you want to take a sample of your bees, get yourself a number, and then you got to decide what your threshold is within that shake. So up here in the spring, my threshold is under 1%, and in the fall, it's under 2%. Uh, Although I would consider we need to be zero. But at any rate, so we're always treating, but we're monitoring to see where our levels are at. And
yeah,
then you monitor, you do your treatment, and then you follow up with another monitor just to see if the treatments are working or not. And that just helps you provide a little bit of a metric of what's going on. You might be able to get away with, well, I can't really say. I've always thought that southern beekeepers like yourself maybe could get away with a little bit more mites because you have more opportunity to grow your hives and and maybe uh no, maybe that's all full of shit because you'll have to treat your colonies more often throughout the year just because you have a nest growing more often, whereas my nests up here shut down for winter for half a year, so there's no brood nest. It's pretty much a dormancy period. uh, so we can get away with one, maybe two treatments through the summer, and then through the winter we don't even look at them. So do you think you need more than one treatment in your colonies, or what's your feel on that?
well, sometimes I've heard you could rotate treatments. Have more treatments. Most thing is what the beekeeper wants. Like you said, what's your goal? What do you want? Do you want under 1%, 2%? Where you're located, because I know Apigard, you have to, if you're colder, warmer, depending on the temperatures, you have to the Apigard, you have to use one dose, two doses each, the temperatures wise. So if you really don't want to go into that trouble, Apivar, you don't have to do that. But the thing is, do they work? Do they kill the
Yeah,
mites? That's
that's the secret there. Yeah. We're finding up here, we have very few limited choices, registered, I should say. And I'm finding that with the AppGuard that I've been treating with, maybe isn't as effective as maybe it used to be. with some of my checkbacks. I'm going through and I'm seeing control for the most part. Colonies looking good, well set up. Um, Under 1%, maybe some at zero. Things are going good. And then I fall upon one with a yard or two in the yard, just boom, just, 10%, 15%, 24%, just this explosion like a mite bomb. It's like, what is going on there? And it's just not making any sense. And I'm suspecting resistance, right? And maybe this is just the anticipation of the resistance that's going to follow through my entire bee yard. But it's an odd one. It's not resistance like when you used Apistan or Checkmate before, or like even expended out to my grain farm using these products. You get resistance and you start seeing it, then it just goes through everything and just a wide sweeping. All of a sudden, it doesn't work. The Apivar seems to be spotty, and it seems to be staggering its follow through with the resistance throughout the yards, and I'm not exactly sure why. And I don't think the makers of Apivar understand it either. There's some kind of there's something going on which isn't allowing it. Like trade-offs, you listen to someone like Corey Stevens who raises VHS queens, and he says when you're acquiring traits and you're trying to breed in certain characteristics, there's always a trade-off. So what's a trade-off? Is the positive trade-off, a negative trade-off? What's the trade-off to make that happen? And so we got to ask yourself, as the mites are becoming resistant to Apivar or Amitraz, and they're saying that the mites aren't becoming resistant quickly. It's very slow and staggered. So that means there's some kind of a trade-off there with the mite that it isn't allowing it to easily happen. So what is that trade-off, right? And it's the same thing when you look at when tracheal mite first introduced itself into the area. It was killing colonies everywhere, but the bees were developed a resistance to that. So the trade-off of becoming resistant to the tracheal mite was very minimal, that it happened very easy. Whereas varroa mite, we've been trying to breed for resistance of varroa mite for over 35 years now, and we haven't really figured it out yet. Not the same way as tracheal mite went through. So that's telling me that there's a trade-off there that is so monumental that we're having trouble developing that resistance to it. And that trade-off is probably to do with the needs of the beekeeper themselves. The resistance to the mite. Well, then maybe that trade-off is we're not as a productive beekeeper, or whatever it is. There's something there that beekeepers aren't accepting, or Mother Nature isn't accepting, that's not allowing it to follow through the very easy transition to tolerating those mites. So it's kind of, that's kind of what's going on up here. I'm looking at last time I was on the stream team, I think it was Greg that asked me exactly what you did. And at that time, I wasn't seeing any trouble with Apivar. And now I was like, I treat Apivar in the spring, and if I need to, I treat it in the fall. And I use oxalic acid vapor late in the season just to clean up the mites. Now I'm going to have to put a little bit more effort, maybe a little more attention to this whole problem. Whereas if I can't rest on Apivar anymore, if it's not going to show the results I want or the inconsistencies, I'm going to have to start mixing in these alternative products, which I'm not too fond of. But maybe I'm going to have to start mixing these products in to my treatment regime and just accept some of those casualties to be able to acquire maybe a more effective Apivar treatment, or maybe just to mix things up a little bit, put those mites on their head so I can follow through of an entire year with an effective treatment. There's an interesting mite treatment coming down the pipe, and it all has to stem through Randy Oliver and all the work he's done for our industry and bringing us a extended release oxalic acid treatment. And it's just about to be registered, I hope, for next season in Canada. The CHC has been doing a lot of work through the regulatory system and the PMRA to get it so beekeepers can use this legally and can be advised to use this. And it seems to me, from what I'm hearing from beekeepers who are trialing this product, maybe, around the corners, that it's working very well right across Western Canada. And this could be a neat little trick for us up here. So if we can just use this product to help manage our mites, maybe not eliminate them, but suppress their mite counts down, then it might help us bridge between, maybe then we could use a formic product, which doesn't knock them all down. Formic product, extended release, and in the fall, maybe we can use, well, maybe, oh, I don't know, maybe then we could use an Apivar product mixed with thymol just to help stir things up and everything like that. So this next season, I'm going to be doing a little bit more experimenting in what needs to be done, and maybe broaden my perspective and just maybe accept some of the casualty that follows through with some of these other products. You got to appreciate our season up here is a lot shorter time period than what you guys down in the south. We're very compressed for our summer season. We have an extended winter period, so that puts a lot of pressure on our growth period in the spring, and we can't make a mistake. So if we throw something on like formic or thymol where it interferes with the brood nest and maybe it takes out a brood nest, that's 2 to 3 weeks that I lost in honeybee growth, let alone survival. If it's coming out of winter, we need them to flip over, and then we need them to grow, and then we need them to go in the honey flow. So if we lose a period of brooding there, then that compromises our production down the line. And the same in the fall, as we leave the honey flow, we're immediately starting to prepare the nest for winter, and we can't be using products that negatively affect the development of that brood nest. We can't compromise those winter bees, otherwise they're going to go in small and they won't winter the way we want them to. So we need to be able to use products the right way, which provide us, mites in our colonies isn't acceptable either. So, that's the second edge of that sword. But we need to be able to use products that don't compromise our nests, that kill our mites, that fit our time regime, and keeps our hive healthy and productive all the way down. So, time to get creative, I guess I can say.
Right. That's right. So I guess the last topic for us to discuss before you leave, because we only have about 20 more minutes. I like to run these streams an hour, so I guess
Sure.
this last 20 minutes will give us time to discuss this one more topic. Is basically, what is your future plan and goal for your beekeeping careers and stuff? Maybe briefly share us with that. Take your time with what what your goals are. Everybody has a plan. Mostly has a plan, a goal. What they really want to do. So I was just gonna ask, what your future goals and plans are.
Live life to its fullest. uh, well, 25 years in, I've built a nice, healthy little business. Uh, Complements the farm nice. Uh, I'm quite content as the way it is. Once you build a business, you make the decision whether or not to keep building the business or to maybe maintain the business and then sustain it moving forward. If I see some ambition from one of my kids or maybe a niece or a nephew, maybe then we could maybe look into expanding the operation a little bit bigger. But right now, my facility is pretty much maxed out at 1,500 colonies. I can't, if I'm going to increase the size of operations, I'll have to double the honey house, because I need to double my extractor, I need to double my hive equipment, I need to double my trucks and my double my manpower and blah 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 blah. So it's just my next transition from 1,500, it would have to be up around that 2,000 or 3,000 hives, where the you just have to growth is all about process. One thing about process is it helps you expand. If you can develop a process, you just duplicate that process. So if you have a certain way of doing things one way, if you want to do more of that thing, you just duplicate or replicate it, bring more facility in to be able to handle more. It just kind of builds like that. So you build your operations in stages. So it kind of goes like from 10 hives to 50, then 50 hives to 100. So then you kind of encapsulate your work around that, and to expand from 100, you almost have to go to 250 hives from that, because then you get more facility, better equipment, maybe start hiring somebody in. 250 to 500 to 1,000. From 1,000, you could push up to 2,000 if you want. I'm in that 1,500 range. I'm pretty much maxed out, but the next one from 1,500 would be like 3,000. So it's just kind of, that's just how things grow. And I'm not ready to invest $1 million into my operation this time, at this time in my life, and busy with the rest of the farm too. We're expanding the rest of the farm, buying land, and just trying to keep ahead of buying equipment and such like that. I have a family of 5, quite content with that. My wife's still happy, so that's always a positive thing.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know. I'm spending a lot more of my time. Like, I do this YouTube stuff, and this is my hobby in a way. This is what I do to get away from the farm. Like, spent all bloody day on the farm today, and working till I hopped on here with you, and I'm going to be working to midnight just welding gates to get ready for this damn sale. So, but I'm making time for this because I enjoy doing it. This is my getaway from the farm. If I didn't have a getaway, I'd be welding gates right now. So I enjoy doing this. It kind of takes some of
Okay.
my time, and also I'm getting more involved into the association and the association work. So that's a drain of my time too. So I'm putting a little bit of my uh, energy into that just to help benefit the industry. So
That's
uh,
cool. Definitely.
I'm the
It's always,
chairperson of the Manitoba Beekeepers. Or sorry, cut you off there. Uh,
uh, I was just
Chairperson of the Manitoba Beekeepers Association. So that's a job on its own. And I'm doing a lot of traveling too through this YouTube gig. I'll be down. I'll probably meet you down at Hive Life.
for sure. I'll be
Ian
there.
have me speaking up on stage in front of, what do you say, 1,900 people.
Okay.
So
Plus all the vendors and stuff. It's gonna be a big convention. I know there's somewhere around like 1,800 people going, and plus the vendors, plus the workers there. So it easily makes it about 2,000 people going to that. So yeah, it's
yeah,
gonna
it's
be
crazy.
great. I know they just stopped because I went on their website because we already got the tickets. I was just looking on the website and I saw they said the tickets were all sold out. So I knew we were gonna get it. So like we bought the tickets like last minute kind of thing. I was like,
So,
once we decided we want to go, I was like, we better go ahead and get them. I heard that they're 200 away from shutting it down. So we got the tickets just in time before they shut it down. So yeah, well, the last thing I guess I'll ask you is just a few different questions of like how what do you do for your business? Like do you build nukes? Do you do queens or do you do all of it?
primarily honey producers. So we focus
Honey producers?
exclusively on honey producing. We make our own queens. So we'll raise, 600 or 700 queens to incorporate into the business. And then we have, and then we make it about that many nukes also. But then we winter, typically not this year because we had a terrible spring, but we typically winter about 300 or 400 nukes to be incorporated into the operation the following year. And if I have a good winter, then I'll sell some of those off. But our main focus primarily is honey.
Honey, that's right. Um, Now this is gonna be a hard question. How much honey do you usually get each year? Because I know you have 1,400 colonies. So what do you expect each year for your honey production?
I'm looking typically around that 250 to 300,000 pounds is
Well,
what we bring in. So it's a lot. It's good for us. I mean, the price of honey is really good right now too, so it's quite
yeah,
lucrative. But the trick of it is you got to keep those hives alive, and if you can't keep the hives alive, we're not making honey. So that's kind of the struggle we're having right now. Last summer, or the year before last, we had 1 in 150 year drought, which just demoralized the farm for production. So we just struggled to get through that, and then that followed through with this winter from hell, and struggled to keep my hives alive. So, and then we kept the core, the integrity of operation together. We're able to produce a pretty good crop this year, and going in, uh, on shaky ground. But I guess it's out of my hands right now. We'll just see what happens this spring. See if any, and if I do have bees alive, that means I'm making money, because if
that's right.
as we can't make honey without bees in the box. So
That's right.
more bees,
Well,
more honey, more money.
that's right. That's why I heard that you can make money off your bees, and then sometimes you can put that back onto your equipment that you buy. Especially because someone like a commercial beekeeper who has like 1,400 hive and expects to expand 200. Well, into that, you're gonna have, you're gonna expend a little money to, get, all that equipment, like especially all the boxes, like woodware down here is, real, it's kind of getting more expensive. It's, it's not
Yeah,
cheap.
if there's one thing, one piece of advice if I were to give to you is to buy your boxes and to build your bees. Because one
Right.
thing about this honey business is bees die. So if you go and take a loan, let's say you get ambitious, Grayson, let's say you want to build this little business of your own, and you want to be a 250 hive beekeeper. So you go out and you invest $100,000 or so into honeybees, and then you find out that I'm maybe not staffed the way I am, or the disease got out of control. You're just not at the point of experience, and you lose those bees. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you have $100,000 loan with a bunch of boxes without bees in them. So what you want to do is invest that money into equipment, because the equipment's not going to disappear on you. It's a tangible asset. You can resell it if you had to. So you put all your money into that capital asset, and then you build your bees to fill those boxes. And typically the way it goes with beekeepers, we don't have a lot of money, so we're scraping by to get enough boxes. So we acquire boxes, and then we build our bees to fill those boxes. And as we're trying to fill those boxes with bees, we're learning the process. And if you run into a bad year, you lose a bunch of bees, it falls back. Who cares? Because that's just your time, right? It's not like
Yeah.
someone's going to be knocking on your door asking for a payment. So that's what I like to tell guys. Lots of guys. I see guys and they buy bees, and I'm like, I know you got to buy bees off the start, and it's got to come from somewhere, but you need to, you just got to watch the way you invest your money. You need to build your business according to your expertise. So you got to learn how to build your
Right.
business with those bees. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, especially with me, like I'm not going to expand to 250, in the stamp of my finger next year. If I did, it cost me a lot of money, like you said, hundred thousand
Yeah.
dollars spending into it. My plan is just to expand slowly, and then once I get more experience with it, then I'm thinking, well, maybe I have enough money to expand to maybe 50 colonies, and I'm like,
Yeah.
probably enough experience to do it. So I'm gonna try it out, and then if I get, say 45 colonies out, I'm like, I like that, and then I expand to 100, and
Yep.
slowly. For me, I'm gonna do that as a slow progress. Like I know, like, Brian has 12 colonies. I think, it's good to start off, slow and then work your way up when over time. Don't, like, like you said, don't, get all the bees, and you don't have that skill. And you have to, like I've heard this, skills, art is required by skill.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah. And you look at a guy like Brian, and like everything is relative in scale. I have 1,400 colonies. Brian has 14. We're doing the same thing, right? I'm managing more because I'm putting all my attention towards it. He's a professional outside of the beekeeping. Beekeeping is a secondary thing. And all the time he's able to be able to spend on his colonies is 14 hives, right? And you try to expand up to 20, those bees, they realize you're not giving us enough attention. Whack, right back down to what you can handle, which is, I think his magic number is 14. Mine's 1,400. If I try expanding up to 2,000, I don't have the facility for that. Mm, boom, right back down to 1,400, right? So everything's relative in scale to that. And we're all doing the same thing. We're all managing that same dynamic. So as you're building out your business, all those things have to be built all at the same time to be able to develop a proper uh, business strategy, right? Otherwise, you're going to fail. So, exactly what you're saying. You have a few colonies now. You want to get up to 40. Well, you got all this facility you need to buy. You got these boxes, all these bees to build, and it's going to take you time to do that. And the bigger you get, maybe a little more bolder you can be with your decision making, and maybe you can reach out a little bit further as that revenue starts to stream in. But it
sure.
all is business, right? And that's the interesting thing about beekeeping as a business, is you can keep it scaled back as some kind of like a hobby or a part-time sideline. Keep it like a little sideshow going on, or you can transition it into something that it turns into a lifestyle. So,
Let's go.
yeah. At any rate, I got to run because the guys are bugging me to get back and
Yeah.
make these gates. We're going to be late in the barn if I don't get back now. But I appreciate the attention, and
Thank you.
I had a great chat with you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end this off because we're right at the hour mark. Well, thank you everybody for watching the live chat and the replay. Thank you, Ian, for hopping on. We'll see everybody next time next week.
Okay, have a good evening.
You too.